Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. I don't have any slides, so you're going to just have to listen to me, and I hope I can hold your attention. First of all, let me congratulate Mustafiz and his team for organizing this first Climate Action Forum event here in Dhaka with the private sector, particularly the ready-made garment sector. I'm very pleased to see so many of you here wishing to get on to this new venture of tackling climate change. I was going to open my remarks by telling you that we have bad news in terms of climate impacts, but our previous speaker gave some very good examples of exactly what's happening in the world around, and it's going to get worse. The last 3 months of this year, 2023, June, July, August, were the hottest 3 months humanity has ever seen. And that will not remain the hottest for long. We are just entering a El Nino year in the Pacific Ocean, and El Nino moves around the whole world, and it's going to elevate temperatures and cause even hotter conditions. So the whole world is going to face impacts of climate change at a scale and at a pace that they have never seen before, and nobody is prepared for it. Not the United States of America, the richest countries, China. Everybody is way behind in terms of understanding the problem and working out what to do about it. Now, having said that, I am not going to spend more time talking about the bad news. I'm going to now talk about the good news in the sense of opportunities that it presents to us here in Bangladesh. The first opportunity is actually a condition of our vulnerability. We happen to be one of the most vulnerable countries. We are suffering the impacts of climate change already. We have been suffering climatic impacts without human-induced climate change, but now with human-induced climate change, they're going to get worse. And in Bangladesh, we actually have a good history of tackling climatic impacts, particularly cyclones. We have the best cyclone warning and evacuation system in the world. Excuse me, I have a sore throat. And we are working on, we heard from the Honorable Minister, we have a national adaptation plan, we have the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, we have the nationally determined contributions plan. So Bangladesh is very, very good at planning. We have all the plans. If you read them, they're excellent plans. I had a hand in writing many of them myself. But we're not very good at implementing our own plans. It's a big, big gap between planning, putting the plan on paper, adopting it by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, and then nothing much happens, either within government or outside government. And that has to change. That's the challenge for us. We need to be taking a whole-of-government approach across all the ministries. We cannot leave it to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change alone. Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Industries, everybody has a role to play. They must understand that, and they must find out ways to do it. The good news is that's happening, but not fast enough. And then we have to actually go well beyond government. Whole of government is not good enough. We need a whole of society approach. And in the beyond government society, we have civil society actors. Bangladesh is very rich, thousands of NGOs working at the grassroots level. We have a very vibrant academic sector. We have more than 100 universities in Bangladesh and research institutes. Not all of high quality, but we have them and they are doing good work. In fact, we have a network of universities working on climate change called Gobeshona. If anybody is interested in learning more, we'd be very happy to engage with you. And we also need the media to highlight the issues, raise awareness. Again, good news is media is doing that to some extent. and we need the private sector. And the private sector is still, in my opinion, a little bit behind the other non-governmental sectors. And I'm very pleased to see so many of you here, but the private sector is much, much, much bigger than the people in this room, and they all need to be brought on board. And I'm going to spend the last few minutes of my talk saying how this can be done, making it happen. So the first thing we need are champions. All of you are champions. The minister mentioned the 187 LEED certified factories. Champions. They've spent their own money getting LEED certification, even though they don't get a single cent extra for their product compared to the other factories. But they did it. They are champions. You are champions. We need champions like all of you to now multiply messages, share knowledge with others, bring them on board. And in my view, it may sound cruel to say this, but ready-made garment factories who refuse to move forward into this new era are just simply going to be left behind. Just competing on cheap labor and not paying your wages of the workers is not going to be a viable model for much longer. You need to be investing in your industry, improving it, making it green, and you also need to be making it also a viable proposition for the garment workers, the millions of women and men who work for you. So the first step in the climate change engagement process is what you've been hearing about here. All the speeches you heard here were about how to reduce emissions of greenhouse gases. That's a very good step. It's a good thing to do. It's actually a profitable thing to do. So many of you are setting up rooftop solar energy, putting investments in renewable energy, in clean energy, in improved processing. All these are actually profitable enterprises. Once you start investing in them, you will actually gain by reducing your costs for other energy supply and other products and chemicals. That's the good news, and many of you are doing it, but not enough. We need a lot more of the industry to follow those examples. But I'm going to spend the last few minutes available to me to take you to the next phase, which is still something that I don't see being addressed or even understood. And that talks about the other side of the climate change coin, which we call impacts, losses and damages, and adaptation. We happen to be living in a country, you've already heard, that's one of the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. When we look at our emissions of greenhouse gases, as you heard from the minister, 0.4% of global emissions. If we went to zero tomorrow, it will not make a difference to the globe. We should do it. It's the right thing to do. We should do it ourselves. But it doesn't make a difference to the global emissions of greenhouse gases. On the other hand, we have 180 million people living in one of the most vulnerable countries in the whole world. And for us, the issue of how we build resilience, how we adapt, how we deal with losses and damages is, in my view, 100 times more important than how we mitigate and reduce emissions. And so simply for our development partners in particular, investing in emission reduction is good, welcome, I am supportive, but if you're not investing in adaptation and loss and damage, then you are actually coming to us with the wrong end of the climate change solution stick. You're giving us a solution for something that doesn't matter in Bangladesh. What matters is how are we going to deal with the impacts. Now, on that side, we actually have a lot of things happening. The government has plans, as I said, government ministries are doing things, many development partners are investing in these activities. Many things are happening. I would encourage anybody who's interested to get in touch, and I'd be very happy to share more information with you. But in particular, I see a specific role for the ready-made garment sector, For those of you who own industries, those of you who run industries, it's your workers. Your workers are the people who create the value that you then get profit from. Those workers are extremely vulnerable. Where they live is usually very vulnerable conditions. Even many of the factories that they work in, although they're improving the conditions, are still very vulnerable. Particularly, and this is a new phenomena that we are now beginning to see in Bangladesh. We didn't see this before. We know floods, we know cyclones, we know droughts in the northeast, northwestern part of the country, but heat waves. We just had a major heat wave recently. We don't get heat waves like this before. Heat waves are extremely disruptive, and garment workers working in your factories are very susceptible to being disrupted by heat waves. So this is something that I would encourage you to think about. Start thinking about it. Again, we need some champions who are willing to be first movers. We'd be very happy to engage with you. We're doing some research on how we can help everybody, but specifically garment workers, know what to do when there's a heat wave. The first thing is knowing what to do and then doing it. And so I'm very encouraged by this. Again, congratulations to Mustafiz and his colleagues for organizing this first forum. I hope it'll be the first of many to come, and that we will all collectively go up a learning curve, a learning and doing curve, not just learning, but learning and doing to tackle climate change, because this country happens to be the place where the solutions for the whole world can be developed, and we can share those solutions with the rest of the world if we come up with the solutions ourselves. And I'm absolutely certain we can do it if we get a committed partners in all the sectors, particularly the private sector, particularly the ready-made garment sector. Thank you very much.